Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswati Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम् सुखं नित्यं स्वप्रकाशं व्यापकं नामरूपयोः अधिष्ठानं बुद्ध्यबोध्यं बुद्धेर्दृग्यत्तु निर्मलम् अपारं सर्ववेदान्त वेद्यं प्रत्यक्परं महः तदेवाहं न मत्तोऽन्यत इति मे निश्चिता मतिः। We are seeing the objections which have been raised about the topic of this text. What were the objections that were raised? The objections were raised according to in this order. First of all, it was said that Jiva and Brahma, their characteristics are different. Therefore, oneness is not possible. Okay, you may say that there is no. There is no oneness in Jiva and Brahman, but Sakshi and Brahman, they are one. Then what we say is, now this is opposition's part, that other than Jiva, there is no such thing as Sakshi. Sakshi different from Jiva does not exist. And even if you say that Sakshi does exist, they being many in number, they cannot have oneness with Brahman. So the opponent has confused in what is Jiva, what is Sakshi. Can there be many Sakshi or there is only one Sakshi? And if oneness between them is possible or not, because their characteristics appear to be different. Where he has taken their differences in characteristics to be real. Differences to be their qualities or characteristic qualities, anyway you can take, to be real. And what we say, they are apparent. They are not really there. For which now answers were given, in which we, in last class we saw the objections or the answers to the objection that Jiva and Sakshi, they both are different. Even though they both are referring to same Chaitanya, they are referring to that Chaitanya in two different ways. Jiva is referring to Chaitanya along with its qualities. So it is quality qualified relation. So Jiva has all the qualities, where Sakshi is conditioned and conditioning. In both the cases, Antahkarana is common, but the understanding is different. And based on that understanding, different ideas have been given. Again, further it was explained that this may be true in reality, because the only difference is in their understanding and the idea, and they being referring to same Chaitanya, there is no real difference between Jiva and Sakshi, because they both are referring to same Chaitanya. You may say SCFL is different from bulb or tube light, but in reality, they both are referring to light. This is very gross example. Do not connect this to conditioned and conditioning and quality, etc. This is just an example. Okay. Further, he explained, the author answered that even though if you say or Sakshi are many in number, it doesn't matter. If you take one Sakshi as Ishvara-Sakshi, their oneness is evident. You don't have to think about it. And even if you say that Sakshi are many in number, it doesn't matter. Just as many pot spaces are not different from total space, because space is space alone. Similarly, Sakshi may be many, even if you assume Sakshi are many, their oneness with one Brahman is not obstructed. And adding to that, the qualities such as Raga, Dvesha, they belong to Antahkarana and Antahkarana alone. Nowhere do they belong to Chaitanya. Why do they not belong to Chaitanya? Because had they belonged to Chaitanya, they would have been seen in Sakshi, which is not in line with Upanishadic quotations and teaching, which is not in line with the Tarka, the logic given by Upanishads. How so? Simple. There is Anvaya, continued presence of Chaitanya throughout waking, dream, deep sleep. Had happiness and sorrows belong to Chaitanya, I would have experienced both of them or all the afflictions in deep sleep also. And because in deep sleep I do not experience them, that which is absent in deep sleep, to that these qualities must be belonging. What is absent in deep sleep? Antahkarana. So raga, dvesha, etc., all the afflictions, they belong to Antahkarana. Now, here, now author is answering further. Sukha-dukkhadayaha vrittyaruda sakshi vishayaha. In objections, one objection was raised that Sakshi alone can perceive and objectify Antahkarana vritti. One Antahkarana vritti cannot objectify another Antahkarana vritti, for which additional explanation and answer is being given. What was said earlier? What was explained there? There it was explained that who can objectify whom? Indriyas, our sense organs, can objectify objects outside. They perceive objects outside and not whatever that is inside. That is Antahkarana vrittis. Antahkarana vrittis can perceive and objectify sense organs. But Antahkarana vrittis cannot objectify themselves or Sakshi. So, what can objectify Antahkarana? Only Sakshi can objectify Antahkarana. And then it was said that many Sakshis cannot be there, because when Sakshi or one Sakshi cannot be there, because when that Sakshi objectifies one Antahkarana vritti, it will start objectifying all Antahkarana vrittis in all different Antahkaranas. That's how the objection proceeded. Now here understand. It is not really Sakshi alone who is objectifying Antahkarana vrittis. Why? Because Sakshi is Asanga. The Sakshi name itself is relative. Is it not? For Sakshi being Sakshi, a witness consciousness, or let's say grossly witness, there has to be something else which is present. But if nothing is present other than Brahman or Chaitanya, how can he become Sakshi? So, let's see the explanation. Sukha dukkhadaya, sukha, dukkha, etc., happiness and sorrows, vrittya rudha sakshi vishayaha. Vrittya rudha, arudha, that which has climbed upon, that which is enjoined, that which is together with. Vritti. So, vritti and sakshi, they are not different. And such a sakshi which is along with vritti That Sakshi alone can be witness of or can objectify Sukha and Dukkha. This is the idea. Sukha Dukkhadayah antahkarana vrittehe na vishayi bhavanti iti yaduktam naitadasti. It's not appropriate, it's not like this. Like what? Sukha Dukkhadaya, happiness and sorrows do not become the object of knowledge of antahkarana vrittis. Yadyapi, even though Sukha Dukkhadaya sakshibhasyaha te cha sakshinaha nana. Even though Sukha, Dukkha, etc. are sakshibhasyaha. Now this is a very beautiful term and beautiful concept. Bhasya, that illumined. Sakshi, witness consciousness. Illumined by witness consciousness. And by illumined, we have to understand they are known. Objects outside are chidabhasa bhasya. I will come to these terms later. And thoughts inside are sakshi bhasya. If you remember the example, drishtanta, there is a mirror or cloth with many mirrors outside in sun, and they are reflecting few rays on the wall inside. Now that wall is being illumined not by the sunlight but by the reflected sunlight. But the mirrors, they are not illumined by reflected sunlight, but they are illumined by sunlight itself. In the same way, the thoughts which are in our mind, even though thought may be referring to the objects outside, when they are inside, they are being illumined by Sakshi. And Sakshi and Vritti, when they come together and form Chidabhasa, they together are illumining the objects outside. They together are illumining the objects outside. So, reflected consciousness is illumining the objects outside. Now, you may say, or you may wonder, because okay, now that we have jumped in that pool, let's start swimming. So you may question that how is it possible? Everything is illuminated by Chaitanya alone. Yes. Even though everything is illuminated by Chaitanya alone, for this prakriya, for this understanding, or everywhere, is it that objects are directly being illuminated by Chaitanya, all the objects? The basic idea and the concept is the objects are known through vritti alone. Is it not? Only when vritti is there, for me that object is existing. For example, any object in your room which I cannot see cannot be known by me, and for me it is non-existent. Even when I think about it, but no vritti, no specific vritti or jnana vritti is forming in my mind. Then how can I say that that is being illuminated by Chaitanya? No. Because for me, for my perception, for the world that is existing for me, it is absent. The world that exists for me is the one where antahkarana vrittis are being formed in my mind, or about which antahkarana vrittis of which are being formed in my mind. And when antahkarana vritti comes, reflected consciousness alone will come. This is the general idea. Many other explanations how it can directly be referring, etc. They are there, but we are not going to go into that details. That detail. So object outside is known through antahkarana vritti, and because it is known through antahkarana vritti, it is understood to be known via reflected consciousness. And reflected consciousness is not being, because it is not different from consciousness. It is said that they are being illumined by consciousness alone. Why? Because consequently, objects are not really there outside, but in form of vrittis in my mind alone. Please underline this in your mind. Please repeat in your mind. Objects are not really existing outside, but they are existing in my mind in form of antakarana vrittis. And this is where real Vedanta starts. And once you have understood this, you know that we understand that we are in control of our happiness and sorrows, because they are nothing but thoughts in my mind which I have invited. So let's keep this aside. This is Sakshi Bhasya and Chirabhasa Bhasya. And because there are many antahkaranas, te cha sakshinaha sa nana. Sakshi are many, many. Tathapi na kevalaha sakshi sukha dukkhadin bhasayati. But sakshi by itself cannot illumine happiness and sorrow. By itself, electricity cannot produce light. It has to be passed through that filament. Kintu vritti dwara eva. For light to be produced, as electricity has to be passed through filament, same way, for sakshi to illumine happiness and sorrow, it has to be together with vritti. तथा ही यदा अंतःकरणस्य सुखदुःखाद्याकारः परिणामः भवति तदैव अंतःकरणस्य अन्यापि वृत्तिः सुखदुःखादि विषयक ज्ञानाकारा भवति. यदा when अंतःकरणस्य सुखदुःखाद्याकारः परिणामः भवति. Now this whole thing is happening in presence of Chaitanya. When one antahkarana vritti gets modified in form of experience of happiness and sorrow, or happiness, sukha vritti, dukkha vritti, that vritti becomes the object of knowledge. That vritti is not directly going to be known. That vritti becomes the object vritti. And at that moment, following that, tada eva antahkaranasya anyapi vrittihi. The another vritti in our antahkarana, sukha dukkhadi vishayaka jnanakara bhavati. Sukha dukkhadi vishayaka, that which has sukha and dukkha as its object. And this vritti becomes the knowledge, jnana vritti or prama vritti. Such a vritti becomes jnanakara, the knowledge vritti and known vritti. In these two vrittis, known vritti, one vritti is experience of happiness and sorrow, and another vritti is that which is going to know that experience. तादृश ज्ञान रूप वृत्त्यारूढ़ः साक्षी सुख दुःखादीन प्रकाशयति. And such a sakshi who has empowered that jnanakara vritti, or who is in combination with that jnanakara vritti, will illumine or will make sukha and dukkha vritti known. Let me give you a very good example. Better, let's take example of local anesthesia. In local anesthesia, even though you are cut, you are pricked, you don't have any idea of sorrow. Why? I'm not going to go into deep sleep, etc., because antahkaran itself is not there. So that example will be faulty and inappropriate. But this is a very good example. In local anesthesia, even though you are being operated, even though a deep wound cut has been made, you don't feel any pain and sorrow. Why? Because that vritti itself is not available for illumining. That's why you don't know. It's not that vritti is not there, but because the pain receptors have already experienced that pain. But that for knowing that object itself is not there. And let's now take the opposite example. Let's go in deep sleep. In deep sleep, the problem is Sakshi is there. But we can never say that I experienced pain and sorrow. Even if someone pricks you and you are completely in deep sleep, we can never say that. Why? Because neither there is a knowledge vritti or that which can illumine or that which can know. So, anaya ritya सुखदुःखादयः साक्षिणः विषयी भवन्ति वृत्तिमन्तरा तु न केवल साक्षिणः विषयी भवन्ति इति प्राचीन ग्रंथकाराः आहुः. In this way, sukha, dukkha, etc. become vishaya, the object of knowledge of Sakshi. Sakshi cannot directly illumine all those sukha and dukkha, but along with vritti, along with jnana vritti, so which is called as prama vritti, prama knowledge, and that which is going to be known prameya, known prameya. Knowledge vritti and object vritti. Understand it in this way if you want to keep it in English. But in absence of vritti, vritti mantaratu na kevala sakshinaha vishay bhavanti. Without vrittis, Sakshi alone cannot objectify them. Itihi prachina granthakara ahu. This has been said by all the ancient masters, all the masters who have come earlier. Granthakaraha, the compositors of those who have composed Vedantic texts. Atraitadakritam. This is what it has been said. Now, author is giving very beautiful example. केवलेप्याकाशे केवलेपि आकाशे घटाकाश इति नाम जलाहरणादिकं कार्य च घटरूपोपादि दृष्टिम् अनुप्रतीयते. न तु ताम उपाधि दृष्टिं विना. Only when there is a pot, a conditioning, then alone it can be said. I will give you brief idea first, and then we will go word by word and line by line. There is a space, what called as pot space. Pot space is existing or pot space is known only when pot upadhi is there. In absence of pot, we can never say, look at this pot space. It is impossible. Same way is with Sakshi. This is the basic idea. Kevale Pyakashe, only in Akasha alone. Everything is space, everywhere there is space alone. Ghatakasha iti, Nama, named as Ghatakasha. Jalaharanadikam Karyacha, and bringing water, etc. through that pot space. Ghatarupopadhi drishtim anupratiyate. Anupratiyate, it follows and it is taken up when Ghatarupa upadhi drishtim. Only when that pot upadhi is taken into consideration, picture. So only when that there is pot space and water can be brought in that pot space. Natutam upadhi drishtim vina. In absence of that pot, vritti, that upadhi, nothing does exist. Upadhi drishtya bhave tu akashaha eva kevalaha pratiyate. In absence of pot, only space is known. There is no pot space, there is no total space. Ataha ghatakashaha api mahakasheva. Therefore, that pot space is nothing but total space alone. Vikarasya vacharambana matratvena mithyatvat. Any vikara, any modification is nothing but vacharambanam, the pronunciation of words, and they being only pronunciation, name and form, mithyatvat. They are mithya. There is a very beautiful definition of what is mithya. Jnana nivartatvam mithyatvam. That which gets negated upon knowledge is mithya. Let me just give you, while we are on this topic, a very beautiful insight into this analysis. There is very beautiful quote by, I think we have referred to this quote earlier. Individual's journey or Jiva's journey is from lower knowledge to higher knowledge. It is never from ignorance to knowledge. In line with this, understand no knowledge is mithya. Let me repeat. No knowledge is mithya. But the entity that is known, it can be mithya. While dreaming, the dream, elephant, tiger, everything is real for me. At that moment, at that specific period of time, that knowledge is real. Even though that which is being known is mithya. So knowledge is never mithya. The problem is if you say knowledge is mithya, unreal, you can never say Brahman also is real. Brahman, I know Brahman. Because there is no reference point to say confer. That's why further, and while analyzing, we remove all the attributes. That's why this idea, jnana nivartatvam mithyatvam. If earlier knowledge gets negated by another knowledge, then that knowledge cannot be called as the ultimate one. Stop calling that as knowledge. That's where they have become much more accurate and much more precise. Because if you really want to know that which is being known is real or not, you have to make difference between the knowledge, if it is real or not. So Here, vikarasya vacharambhana matratvena mithyatvat. This is vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam mrittiketyeva satyam karšnaya samityeva satyam swarnamityeva satyam, etc. This comes in Chandogya Upanishad. You may call it as pot, you may call it as cup, you may call it as plate, in by any name. It is nothing but mud and mud alone. I find the better example being gold and gold ornaments, because the objection can be raised after a pot is made, after it has been baked, etc. That mud cannot go back into its original state and can be used as fertile soil. So to avoid this unnecessary argument, let's stick with gold. If gold ring, that form was real, we have seen this earlier. If that form was real, you could have never melt, or you cannot melt that ring to make another ornament. It would have been impossible. Why? Because what is real? That which exists in all three periods of time. We are not concerned about relatively real. We are concerned about absolutely real. So that name and form is just that which is being spoken, vacharambhanam, just a thought modification in our mind. In reality, it is nothing but gold and gold alone. Now, gold here is again example. Same way, go back to Chaitanya. Chaitanya and Chaitanya alone is real. Everything else is vacharambhana. And because vacharambhana matratvena mithyatvat, in one object alone, many things can be seen. Another concept and idea, of course, this is going to come later. Vacharambhana, just the arambhana is beginning, start. Vacha, spoken words. It is nothing but name and form. Let's stick with name and form. On a rope, many things can be attributed and seen. It can be a branch, it can be garland, it can be snake, it can be a stream of water, anything. And consequently, on a stream of water, it can appear as rope, it can appear as snake, it can appear as garland, it can appear as branch, or it can appear as crack on the road. That which is really there is the original entity, and everything else becomes vacharambhana. Just the thoughts in our mind, name and form in our mind, and because they are names and forms, they are mithya. And after knowing the reality, they all go away. Evam, eva, in this way alone, sakshat shuddha chaitanya matre, sakshi iti nama, sukha dukkhadi dharma shrayantah karana, prakashakatva rupa karyashchantah karana rupopadi drishtim anusrityeva pratiyate matutamvina. This sentence is long, but idea is simple. Evameva, in this way, sakshat shuddha chaitanya matre, sakshi iti nama, sakshat shuddha chaitanya, only in presence of, only where chaitanya alone is there, something called as sakshi. Sukha dukkhadi dharma shrayantah karana, antahkarana which has taken resort to ashraya or in which sukha dukkha has taken ashraya. Sukha dukkha has taken support of antahkarana. Such an antahkarana prakashakatva rupa karyaha. The illumining of such an antahkarana. which is supporting sukha, dukha, etc. Such antahkarana rupa upadhi drishtim anusrutyeva pratiyate. Antahkarana rupa upadhi. Upadhi in the form of antahkarana. Tam anusritya eva. Following that antahkarana vritti alone, sakshi pratiyate. Natu tam vina. Now, this whole big sentence has very small idea, very simple idea. In or Shuddha Chaitanya can be called as Sakshi only when there is Antahkarana Vritti which is supporting Sukha and Dukkha, etc. And that Antahkarana Vritti is being known by another Antahkarana Vritti which is in combination with Chaitanya. And in such a case, that Chaitanya can be known as Sakshi in absence of second Antahkarana Vritti or any Antahkarana Vritti. Neither there is Sakshi, neither there is Sakshya, that which can be known. Upadhi Drishtya Bhavetu Chinmatra Brahmaiva Kevalam Bhasate. In absence of Upadhi, in absence of Antahkarana Vritti, there is Brahman and Brahman alone, just as in absence of pot, there is nothing but space alone. Ataha Sakshati Brahma eva. Therefore, Sakshi is Brahman alone. How can Sakshi be different from Brahman? No. Idrug abhiprayena eva uktam Sakshi eka eva iti. And with this idea, it has been explained that Sakshi is one and one alone. Yataha, because Upadhi prayukta bheda drishtimantara Sakshinaha anekatva parichannatvadikam na swataha avabhasate. Why it had been said that Sakshi is one and one alone? Because in absence of all these upadhis, all different antahkaranas, how can there be manyness of Sakshi? How can there be Sakshi himself? Yes, at Ishvara level, that's one Sakshi is there. But for Jivas, there cannot be manyness of Sakshi. Why? Because upadhis are not real. Na swataha avabhasate. On its own, many Sakshis will not appear, cannot be there. Ayameva Sakshi Jiva Vachaka Tvam Pada Lakshartha. This Sakshi alone is the Lakshartha, implied meaning of Jiva Vachaka Tvam Pada. In Tattvamasi, the direct meaning is Tat Tvamasi. Tat, that Brahma, Tvam, you, Jiva, Asi, are. You, Jiva, are that Brahman. So you, Jiva, are that Brahman when it is said. Tvam, the direct meaning is Jiva. But what is the implied meaning? Sakshi. Why? Because in that Upadesha, vrittis are taken into consideration. Why? Jiva. So, indirect, implied. Upadishtat etat spashti kriyate. Later, it will be explained. What will be explained? Jiva tvam pada lakshartha. Jiva vachaka tvam pada lakshartha, etc. Itham, in this way, Jiva brahmaikyam asya granthasya vishayaha iti yuktamevoktam. Oneness of Jiva and Brahman is the object of this text, is appropriate. Now, all the objections that you had raised, that the topic itself is wrong. Why? Because oneness is not possible, has been answered. In short, oneness is there. So, Vishaya is over, Adhikari is over. What is left? Prayojana. Prayojana Vishayaka Akshepa. Objections have been raised about the purpose of this text. What was the purpose? Jnana Nivritti and Paramananda Prapti. Ajnana Nivritti Paramananda Prapti. And for which it was said, by knowledge alone, by Brahma Jnana alone, moksha can be gained. That whole analysis we had seen. Let me just give you a small idea. It was said, the prayojana is atyantika dukkha nivritti paramananda prapti. And for atyantika dukkha nivritti and paramananda prapti, you need to gain Brahma Jnana. Why? Because by no other means permanent removal of sorrows is possible, and knowledge of Brahman cannot be gained. Why? For Paramananda Prapti, that which is Paramananda Swarupa needs to be known, and for Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti also, ignorance needs to be removed. So Ajnana Nivritti can take place by Jnana alone. Now, taking this part, objection is being raised. Objections are now being raised about Ajnana. Na jnanena bandha nivritti ityakshepah. Yes, we accept that bondage is there, but that bondage cannot be removed by knowledge. In Brahma Sutra Bhashya somewhere, or I think in Adhyasa Bhashya itself, it is said, everybody has accepted bandha. Everybody accepts bondage is there. Everybody accepts moksha needs to be gained. But everybody's idea about bandha, bondage are different. And because their ideas about bondage are different, their ideas about means by which that bondage can be removed are different. All darshana. I'm referring to all different darshana. Vedanta has accepted adhyasa, and for which adhyasa bhashya has been written to explain what that idea. Some parts are going to come now. Now, author is in raising questions. Let me just give you brief introduction. In detail, we will see next time. He is going to convince us that it is not adhyasa. That bondage is not apparent, but it is real. The snake appearing on rope is real. How is he going to prove that? He is going to challenge our concept of adhyasa. All the instruments by which adhyasa takes place, superimposition takes place, he is going to challenge that superimposition, those ideas, and question about our idea of superimposition. Once that is challenged and when that is removed, as we have seen earlier, when bondage becomes real, knowledge cannot remove that. For example, if there is any spot or if there is any dirt on this cloth, even though I know cloth is white in color, by knowing cloth is white in color, that dirt is not going to go away. I have to wash it to remove that dirt. Why? Because the dirt and the cloth have same reality. They are existing in same plane of reality. Their satta is same, equal, one. Because as much is the reality of the cloth, so much is the reality of the dirt on that cloth, where I have to perform karma to remove that dirt. So as much as is the reality of Brahman, So if is the reality of bondage, if as is the reality of Brahman, so is the reality of bondage, knowledge will not work. We have to perform karma to remove that bondage. This is what is going to be explained, what is going to be questioned in different ways, and later all this will be answered. So we'll conclude now. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Shanti Om Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om